Good morning to everyone. Hope everyone's having a good Sunday morning so far.
Good
Um,
morning.
before the morning, before I recap and get started, just based on last week or yesterday, are there any questions or statements that anyone wants to make or ask? Any questions that they have in their minds? Please feel free to do so now.
Hey, yes, it's Ron.
Hey, good morning,
Uh,
Ron.
good morning. How's everybody? I I listened to the part of the video. I may have gotten halfway through it, and I have to admit I'm really excited about today. Just what you guys talked about and some of my questions and maybe even a couple of observations. But the funny thing is, I got a thought that I probably got more out of listening to it this way than I did if I had been on yesterday. I think this gave me an opportunity to stop it and ponder what was being said and pause a little bit and maybe jot some stuff down. So I enjoyed what I heard, although I haven't finished it yet. Uh, one observation that I have that I like to bring up that I brought up before, uh, and I think I'm seeing something a little different on this. There were two more earthquakes Friday uh, in South Carolina. Now, the interesting thing about this is I'm sure most of us know that follow the news that most of these things happen on the West Coast and or abroad somewhere, and most of the time they're pretty destructive. Uh, these that are happening in South Carolina are, from what I could tell, and I don't know what the total is, and I wish I had kept up as when they actually started. But they're not in a destructive nature. In fact, I think they've been probably about 1.5 to 2.7 to 2.8 in magnitude, and just since I started looking at them, paying more attention to them, that's what I've noticed, and that range could be slightly different too. But I see it now as uh, them being the manifestation of change in the earth. That it is something that is happening gradually. It is change that is going on that is affecting the very core of mankind or the earth that we have created, and not something that so much is I'm going to shake you and destroy this, but I'm gradually changing what you have built to be your truth. And but does anybody else have any insight on that? I thought it just kind of interesting that one of them was could barely be read, and the other one I think was like a 2.5 or something. But these things just continue to intrigue me before we get into yesterday's lesson. Any other thoughts on that?
Hey, Ron. I had asked that same question a month ago because it was 18 earthquake just in South Carolina. And no one didn't have any answer about it, and I ain't heard no more about it.
Well,
That's,
I didn't know the exact number anymore. It's been so many of them, but two of them happened in Friday in different areas, of course. But I just these things just to me that they're saying something that I guess I yet don't see, and I think I don't see them as anything extremely negative though, and that's what I'm interested in. Does anybody else see that a little differently?
One way to,
I don't.
honey,
Go ahead, Bob.
um, good morning. One way to look at it is similar to birth pains. And when something is about to be birthed, like a baby, the pains are increasing. And that's not a negative thing. It just means that the time is near for that to be birthed. So, I mean, there are things continuously being birthed in the earth, and that could be one precursor one. I don't know what another word for precursor. One indicator that something is about to be birthed, or something specific is about to be birthed.
Okay, I like that. Yeah. That kind of ties into what I think I see with this energy thing, and it's kind of what you guys said yesterday. Did you see something different, Pastor?
No, I was just going to say that one of the things that I find intriguing about it is that they are gentle, yet there is a fault line that runs from Charleston up to Newberry that is just as fragile as the Andreas fault line in California. That's all.
As I thought about these, I thought about something was said yesterday. A couple of things. One thing Pastor mentioned on yesterday when he mentioned energy. Let's see, I wrote this down. He talked about the resistance of energy to change, and that caught my attention. And then I further listened to what you guys are saying and the expansion and the energies, the struggles that we have, and those individual energies that sometimes, as Barbara put it, get us stuck. And it just reminded me of so many things. And I remember the guy, I can't remember what country Kilimanjaro is in, but he was talking about how the people came and took over because the indigenous people lived there all along, and they farmed the land and they fished the land and they traded goods, and they knew what crops grew better at what regions and what grew better under this tree or in that opening, and they just did that, and they rotated as you know, to protect the soil. They rotated, the tribes did. So I knew that I might be planting corn, but you're planting beans, so yours is going to have a different effect on the soil than mine, and you're going to plant in a different region. And that's how they survived. And all these people, and then somebody comes in and says, can you pay tax on this land? If you can't pay taxes on it, you're going to have to leave. So now all of a sudden, I'm working for you because I need a way of survival. Whereas before, the way we ran things or the way we did things, there was no such thing as mine or yours, nor was there any such thing as poverty. We were all the same, and we all shared. So in looking at it from that perspective, these individual struggles tend to separate us and keep us from getting back to the shared mentality. I was saying to, it must have been my sister, and it's something I've said for years, even before I moved to Spartanburg. Something I noticed about me is that I've always been a better at finding solutions to other people's problems than my own. So I struggle with my problems, but I seem to be able to help other people at a faster rate or see solutions. So that just spoke to me listening to you guys yesterday talk about your problems, individual problems, and seeing things from a collective perspective. I think that is the key. And it just made me think that if the person that is searching for truth and is able to see the oneness of the universe and everybody that's in it, that puts that person in a higher frequency, right? Or at least I would think so, as to being able to have an effect on energy. So if energy is running in the earth, it is working at a lower frequency for selfishness than it would be for someone who is trying to bring about truth the importance of sharing and being one. So I just want to see it from that perspective and put that together with Pastor's statement about the resistance of energy to change. Would that be something that we're getting into without even probably looking at it from that perspective, elevating the energy from a higher frequency, and what does that mean to us and to the earth? That's one of my questions anyway.
How you're asking, how does that frequency impact the earth?
Yes. If
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm saying maybe this resistance to change not only is it but when you said that, what I saw was white privilege. Is that the energy that is resistant to change? Or we're talking about from that perspective? But when you guys start talking about the individual struggles and being stuck, that too is an energy that is resistance to change. So if we get that or move past that and on to who and what we're supposed to be, what does that say about energy? Are we operating at a higher frequency? And what does that mean exactly?
Okay, I got you. First of all, the idea of white privilege is the energy that has proven to be destructive in the earth. And when I talk about the resistance of energy to change, I am talking about the same energy that creates the belief that that there exists something called white superiority, or that something exists called white privilege. It exists in the minds of men, but it does not exist in the makeup of the universe, which means that those concepts of white privilege, of racism, and all the other isms that are detrimental to the development of humanity are functioning at a frequency level that is totally different than the frequency of the universe. The universe vibrates at, I think the frequency is 432 hertz. And anything that is above that or below that is off balance. How does that affect us when we talk about the individual / collective when we face these issues in our lives? When we talked yesterday about the issues that we face in our lives, one of the things that we looked at is, at this point in our lives on this journey, it appears as though all of us meaning the facilitators, or at the very least, the overwhelming majority of us on this line, are facing things that are more personal than the things we've dealt with in the past. In the past, when we looked at things that shook us or gave us reason for pause, they were in relationship to what was happening in the lives of other people, which was impacting humanity. The closer we have gotten to understanding who we are, not just embracing it, but understanding who we are, the more personal these issues or these conflicts has become. And when I talk about them being a distraction, they are designed to distract us from the journey that we're on. And the distraction is what changes the frequency level, meaning that if we get caught up in the things that are happening in our lives in such a way that they do become a major distraction, or they do push us to a place where we get to why me or seeking vengeance, we are then out of frequency with the universe. When we see it as a distraction, we understand that it is a distraction, then we continue to hold on to what we know the truth to be, and in doing so, we become the bearers of each other's burdens. We become the ones who stand in the gap, the repairers of the breach. And when we do that, we are maintaining the unicity that we have with the universe. Our frequency, our vibration frequency is 432 hertz, as that is of the earth, of the universe. The universe, the earth, everything, they both vibrate at the same frequency. We are the determinants of whether or not the earth will be in sync with the frequency of the universe. And up to now, because of our having been over generations inundated with a frequency that is out of balance with the universe, we have been out of balance. And it is not very difficult to push us to a place where we are out of balance again. Now, how does that look? When I spoke yesterday about the energy that is making every effort to create these contradictions so that it can maintain the status quo. The energy that we speak of to bring balance influences everything in the earth. Just like the energy that is seeking to maintain the status quo affects everything in the earth. The people who are making every effort to sustain the status quo are the sources of the energy that creates these distractions in our lives. An example of that is this: if you take electronic equipment to Europe, you cannot use it without having a converter, because the voltage in this country is 110, and in Europe is 220. So if you can see white supremacy, white whatever, as being the progenitor of all of these things that beset the world, then it is not difficult to see how destructive it can be. If we can see ourselves as the electronic equipment, and if we plug into the 220, we are destroyed, or destruction takes place beyond repair. So if we understand the 220 versus the 110, then we take a converter and we convert that 220 to 110 so it does not become destructive. So when we are in the same frequency with the universe, we become that converter. We began to convert the energy that has been gathered for the purpose of domination, racism, etc. We convert that energy to something that will benefit the whole of humanity. So that's what I mean when I talk about the energy that we must repurpose for the benefit of humanity, and not yield to its efforts to distract us by presenting personal, sometimes devastating issues introducing them to our lives. Does that make sense to you, Ron, and the others, of course?
Yeah, it does. I was I think I put two or three things together. Yesterday's tape kind of got me a little excited, so I probably said too much at the beginning there and kind of got you a little confused. But thank you. There was one other observation I had. Something that was said, and I talked to you earlier. I used the example of Muhammad Ali, and I guess this was something I heard Barbara say when she was talking about the struggles and the expansion of the struggle. Her and FT were talking. I heard Muhammad Ali talking one time, and someone asked him about his fatigue and how tired he was all the time. And he reminded them that he loved being Muhammad Ali. He loved being able to walk on the street and see somebody and brighten up their face and make them smile and change their day. And you know, so even though he was always tired, that's not something he was going to give up doing if he didn't have to. And that kind of stuck with me. And I wonder sometimes, as you talk about the higher frequency, and have we reached a point, or are we reaching a point that you no longer belong to yourself, that you are becoming a part of the universe? So the issues that we face, as was said, and I guess I'm just saying this a different way, may be issues that the universe is facing, that other people are facing, whether they're neighbors or neighbors across Africa. You are that the depression that you feel, or like one day this week, I felt depressed, and I kept asking myself, where is this coming from? Why do I feel this way? And you know, it took me a while to shake it, but it just made me think maybe that this energy that you're speaking of, we may see it individually, but it's not individual at all. It is something that is designed for you to deal with, so that mankind can too be free and be able to see who he is as well. So what are your thoughts there?
I was talking with yesterday. I was talking with Kathy, and she reminded me of something we talked about earlier. We on this line and on this line collectively, and that is when the tribes of Israel were getting ready to move out, to move from one place to another. One of the tribes was not given wagons to carry their goods, and they inquired as to why. And they were told, because your backs are strong, meaning that you are capable of carrying the load that others are not capable of doing. They are not strong enough yet to be able to do that. So how does that fit into what you just raised? It is saying that we have been carrying a global burden for humanity. And we have been also carrying our own. So when you speak of the idea of depression, it very well could be, and probably is, depression from a global perspective, but also depression from someone within the confines of this group that we are connected to, that we are one with. And when I say group, I use it very loosely because we are more of a unified collective, which makes us one, than we are a group, which speaks of individuals that can possibly be separated. So what I'm saying in essence is that if you don't know who you are, it is extremely difficult to deal with depression. When you embrace who you are and begin to function in that manner, it is then that you begin to not only incur the depression. I'm using depression simply as an example. Depression of others globally, but also the collective. So it is very difficult to delineate between the two, whether it's the collective or whether it is global. It really doesn't matter. And the reason it doesn't matter is because depression is depression. And each time that we are able to face this depression and move to a place of balance without this depression having an adverse effect on our lives and the lives of others around us, we begin at that point to repurpose the energy that brings about that depression. And the repurposing of that energy becomes effective worldwide. We have talked about the discrepancies between the haves and the have-nots, and that energy that we have put in the macro, that energy is in the macro only because when we are discussing it, we are in the same at the same frequency of the universe, and that's what allows it to enter the macro, so humanity can receive a benefit from it. So each time that we are faced with a distraction, that we are faced with what we deem to be a problem, when we are faced with something that we feel like has the propensity to bring us to a halt, when we face those things, and when we, excuse me, as we've spoken of in the past, sit with them. When we sit with them, we're pondering them, and we have we have a question to answer. And the question to answer is, are we going to seek the source of the depression and go after it, or are we going to see it for what it is and not seeing the source of it, just embrace it and transform that energy into something that makes us more vibrant and that releases us from the chains of depression? When we do that, it is at that point that we have chosen to function as Elohim, or to remain Elohim. We cannot have an ebb and flow. Today we're Elohim, tomorrow we're not. We can't do that. We cannot speak about the Elohim that I am in the sense that, because that gives a sense rather that we are the Elohim that I am at this point, but I'm not the Elohim later on. However, if we speak of it in terms and use the words, I am Elohim, then that carries very different energy, very different connotation than it does when we say the Elohim that I am, or when we use the term that we are not so much functioning, but we're operating as something. Operating the machine means that you operate it, but you're not doing it all the time. When I am Elohim, and that's how I function, then that means that it happens all the time. So when we sit and ponder, as you said, Ron, trying to figure out the source of it, we cannot necessarily all the time figure it out. And again, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we recognize that it's there and make a determination that this is how we deal with it. I am Elohim, and that's how I function. That deals with anything, or that overshadows or brings balance to anything that confronts us throughout this journey. I hope that's that helps you see more clearly the question that you raised.
Yes, sir, it does, and that kind of reminded me. It kind of ties together what Barbara said in the beginning. I asked the question about the earthquake because it dawned on me that what if all the rest of them, the big ones that we've seen out west and globally have been earthquakes of destruction? What if these are gradual changes that correct something that has been wrong, what that has happened to the very core of the earth? So that just, I just saw so many things listening to the tape, and that just kind of stuck with me. So, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Ron, keep in mind, you're welcome. Keep in mind that earthquakes are the movement of energy.
Yes.
So that's one of the things that we have to also keep in mind. It's no different than the waves on the ocean. The energy beneath those waves is what causes the waves in the first place. So everything is influenced by energy, and it's upon us to influence the energy to the extent that it becomes one within that all energy become balanced with the universe, which means that the frequency of all energy would be approximately 432 hertz as it flows through, which means that it does not damage anything. It simply enhances everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
As you guys were talking, there were a couple things from yesterday that really stuck with me and really resonated with me, and it had to do with our having the power to deal with any of these perceived obstructions or perceived challenges or perceived struggles that, as you said, Pastor, it's in the mind of the man, of the woman, of humanity. And so as Elohim, I'm like a transformer then. I am the power source. And when there is power coming in, like a charge that when lightning strikes, it sends a charge that could potentially short out the whole house. Well, knowing and having the consciousness that I am Elohim, and I get that kind of charge from the universe, or from even, and that includes my personal life, because my personal life is part of the universe, and vice versa. So when I get that kind of charge, it's up to me to determine what I do with it. And so when I choose to embrace it, and as you guys talk about, as Kathy talked, sit with it, let it just create the space so that it does not necessarily destroy anything. But if I'm resonating, I am Elohim, I'm resonating at a higher frequency, that thing has to begin to resonate at my frequency. So it's imperative that I know that I am Elohim, and that thing is transformed. I am the transformer. And so, as you said, energy is neutral. That's what you said yesterday. And if the perception is just one way or the other, then I have the ability to neutralize any perceived problems and change them so that they resonate with the universe. And so that's how we create. That's how we repurpose. That's how we change everything that's going on. Because what happens is when I resonate, even I, one individual, but because I am one with the universe also, when I change me, it sort of resonates in the universe, as you said, and everyone has access to it. So that struck me yesterday, that I have the power to change or repurpose that energy to be what it needs to be, and not necessarily an obstruction or a struggle. Thank you.
Barbara, that's what Jesus did. What you just described is Jesus being one with the universe. Jesus' frequency being the same as that of the universe. And that one man, because he was vibrating in conjunction with the universe, was able to change the course of humanity, and at the same time leave in the earth the energy necessary for those who would come after him, for those who would come after him to be able to do the same thing that he did. But the greater thing, I believe, also includes the balance that we are capable of bringing to the entire earth. Suppose Jesus saw our day coming. Suppose Jesus saw the day would come when men would communicate with each other without having to travel great distances on ships or on camels or in wagons. Suppose he saw our day coming when men would be able to communicate through the airwaves. And the greater thing is, or at least a part of it, is being able to manifest this energy through the airways so that the whole earth can benefit from it. What am I saying? That the frequency would be influenced worldwide to the point that it will become 432 hertz. And in doing so, would indeed not only influence the minds of men, but become such of an influence until they see it as a burden that they're resisting, until they are able to open their eye and realize that this is where humanity should always be. That makes sense?
Yes.
So in that regard, we are a continuation of the energy that Jesus brought and introduced again in the earth, because it was him. It was always in the earth. And the idea of imbalance was purposely introduced to the earth so that the physical man could become the creator of humanity, could bring the creation of humanity. Oh, I'm sorry, let's back up a moment. That this entity called man could complete creation, could complete the creation of the human by virtue of becoming not a resistor to the onslaught of destructive energy, but being a conduit through which this energy could be repurposed for the benefit of humanity. A child that is angry and throwing stuff if you embrace that child and hold that child, what are you doing? You are infusing that child with an energy of calmness, and that helps that child. I'm not talking about in every case. This is simply an example of what most of us probably have experienced at some time in our lives. So it does not destroy the child's energy. What does it do? It repurposes that energy. It calms that energy. It grants that, shows that energy how to flow in a balanced, even way, so that it does not become resistant to balance itself, which means that it seeks to be destructive. Thank you.
Pastor, just to add to that, when you speak about a conduit, and I'm thinking about what Ron was saying about the earthquakes, and his supposition that maybe it's a repositioning of energy. Well, energy is transferred. It's never destroyed, it's transferred. So suppose that energy that's being brought up and out of the earth from those earthquakes, suppose that's energy that we should be absorbing in the sense of being a conduit. Anyway, that's what it makes me think about. Thanks.
That makes sense. You're welcome.
I guess one of the things I see here, what you're saying that I really, really embrace is a lot of times, excuse me, whether it's something personal with me or something I feel on television, that which I see with my eyes can be overwhelming. But what you're saying, and we look at it from an energy perspective and balance, and if I can see it from that perspective and refocus my vision on bringing balance and being in balance with the 432 hertz, it just gives me a different focus. And I guess that is the focus of my eye and not my eyes, because sometimes I do feel a bit overwhelmed when I see things, and I have to calm myself before I can gain that focus back. So I just listening to what was said, it puts things in a different perspective as to how in the future I hope to view things.
One of the things, what you described, we talked about yesterday, is the impact of us having that tunnel vision sometimes, which means we're not aware of everything that's going on, or our awareness is limited. And so one way to look at the earthquakes too, and what you're describing, is just the tunnel vision, because when we have tunnel vision, for instance, our view isn't expanded. We've got a narrow view of something. And so whether it be someone who's just locked into religion, or just going to church, what we call a church every Sunday, not really getting anything out of that. For example, that vision is tied into just a tunnel vision. You're not seeing anything around you, no peripheral. And so what happens is that person, or when we're locked in tunnel vision wise, we limit ourselves. We also limit our energy, because we're not participating. We're not getting our energy involved. So when someone has a lack of involvement as well, what's happening to their energy, what's happening to them, they are energy. So they're kind of stagnant, kind of stuck. And so when you're stuck, your energy isn't flowing into places it should or it could. So when we expand our view, we allow ourselves to participate. and to get involved. And when we're involved because we're aware of a situation, that awareness allows us to be who we are. It's kind of like, I think Pastor said a couple of days ago or last week, is like from a spiritual perspective, when we start hearing God, we're really hearing our true selves. And so now when our awareness is expanded, that true self is allowed to get involved because we're not missing the signs of things. We've removed that tunnel vision. And so just wanted to come at it from that perspective, is that we always view ourselves as growing, but that growth is the expansion, not necessarily like going forward or back or dealing with things or feeling tired. When we expand our view, we expand that awareness so that we can repurpose energy. We can utilize our strengths and identity. And when we get locked in the tunnel vision, that also limits our participation, which has that effect of just keeping the energy stagnant and stuck and still. So I just wanted to add that to on what you were saying. Any other questions or comments on that piece based on what we were building off?
Yeah, just an off comment. I don't know where it came from, but as you were speaking, I thought about what they were doing in Norway with putting the copper beneath the pavement of the road so that the automobiles, electric, could be recharged as the person drives the vehicle. It would not have to stop at an electrical charging station or anything like that. And that's what they're experimenting with. And it's almost like when we were talking about being expansive and expanding our view, we don't look at things as in a chopped up measure of, I'm going to do this just for this problem, or I'm going to do this just for this problem here. It expands our view so that we see more of the whole, and that's where the ideas come in, the creative ideas come in. Why do we have to stop the station, et cetera, et cetera? In other words, the conduit, the way we channel and the energy can be for a greater good when we are not stuck with specific challenges that we allow ourselves to sit in too long. When I say sit in too long, meaning it's so long that we don't take action. And so it just reminded me of that the expansiveness and that the flow of energy is such that everyone can take advantage of it, not because somebody owns it, but because somebody thought enough to allow that flow, like the copper beneath the pavement, so that everybody could take advantage and everybody could benefit from it. And that may not make very much sense, but I just thought about that as you were talking.
What you said, Barbara, made me think of something else. What you are describing to me, what I see is the elimination of greed.
Yeah.
Because think about that happening in this country. One is we need to change our way of speaking. Because the first thing probably came to most of our minds is that would never happen in America because they can't, unless they can figure out how to get rich from it. The oil companies got to make their money. We must change that to conversation about this country beginning to take on an attitude that will result in everything being done for the benefit of the whole, as opposed to the benefit of a few. And that Norway example is a good starting place. Thank you.
Thank you. That goes back to the same energy you talked about before. You know, be the same energy of benevolence and sharing, or you can turn that, you know, to greed and selfishness. And so, and it's sort of going back to where we were yesterday about just understanding that, you know, we're the true solution to everything. And the solution is who we are, and who we are kind of incorporates all these things, because it doesn't limit us. It doesn't put tunnel vision on us. It doesn't restrict us from seeing the signs and from seeing signs of things. You know, and when we miss signs, when we miss things, we miss what's needed as well. So by us being aware, we have a better understanding of who we are. It helps us also understand what's needed, you know, because we have that awareness. We are in tuned. And, you know, going back to just the overall thing about the eighth sense, it keeps us in tune with what's needed, because we're aware of what's always going on around us, and that awareness and that clarity of who we are and what's going on, what's needed. It also influences our desires to, you know, put the proper energy out there, so that we start, you know, looking at a big picture and as a whole, how we function. That's how we function, because our desires are always influenced based on who we are, and we understand what's needed. We're aware of what's needed, what's the timing of it. We don't miss anything. We don't take anything for granted. We don't view things as a coincidence. And it's like when Ron started out, and he was talking about the earthquakes, that, you know, that's missed in a lot of places. And not saying that no one heard of it happening, but no one's really taking the time to think about the significance of it. And so just you know, constantly being aware with the universe, what's going on with us. That's what the sense is about. It's spiritual connectiveness. It's energy doesn't flow. If you look at down the line, if there's a break in the line, the energy beyond that break is not as strong. And so when we view ourselves as being connected that way, is not being a break, so it continuously flows down the line. It expands, and you know, like I said yesterday, just kind of hit me when we're talking. Growth is not always just going forward or being able to progress or move forward. It's really about expansion. You know, when we start saying expanding our knowledge, expanding our perspective, moving forward, we're able to see stuff more clearly. We're able to be more aware of what's going on, and so that expansion is really what's you know, what got me excited yesterday about our communication and our connection, because that's really what our connection is. It's really about more of an expansion, you know, horizontal. And we never think about horizontal as growth. We all think about going up or going forward or progressing. But the horizontal expansion is what if we can really see that, we can really see that we're all connected, and that none of the other things matters, because they're coming towards you anyway. But if we build this fortress, we expand out, we expand our knowledge and our depths and our understanding, that it just kind of helps us function, and it helps us to understand that identity and function better. Any questions before we start going forward on it? Or comments?
Yes, it's Ron. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just a side comment. You know, we've been learning from someone named James Richard for years about the importance of what this state has contributed to what's going on in this country, and from a perspective that's not quite as good as it could have been as well. The negative kinds of things we've contributed, and so it could be that the earthquakes and the numerous the amount of earthquakes shows us a shift that's going on. Just like that iceberg, most of it is covered up, but with an earthquake, that shift is going on. It's just enough that if we are able to repurpose that energy, I'm sorry, let me repeat that. As we repurpose that energy that's released, even from earthquakes, and target it, focus it, put it in our quote unquote spiritual pipeline, our power line for loving kindness and for harmony and balance. Perhaps that's what's happening in this part of the country, because what happens in this part of the country, in this state, impacts what happens in this nation, and that impacts what happens in the world. So that is another way of, as you say, as expanding our awareness so that we can purposely place the energy, target the energy where it needs to be. Thank you. Sorry, Ron.
May I say one thing before you? Huh?
Yes, of course. Yes.
The energy that we're talking about, keep in mind, based on what Audrey said and what is being said, remember this. We have, for quite some time, known that we must absorb the energy of a storm, of a hurricane, in order for us to keep it from being destructive. We used to call Kathy the weather lady because she always knew about the storms and always reminded us, we need to deal with this. We need to turn it. How did we do that? It's the energy. So we have known for some time that we are a transformer, like the transformer on the post that transforms the electricity in such a way that it is usable in houses as opposed to destroying them. That's who we are. We have been absorbing this for years. Now we're beginning to understand not only the why of it, but we're also understanding the necessity of it. Thank you. Thank you, Ron, for giving me that space.
Yes, sir. And mine plugs right into that. I agree with what was said. I got so excited at the beginning of this, I didn't say everything I had written down here. It is no coincidence it's happening in South Carolina. And as Barbara reminded us all the times, Pastor has said, living in South Carolina and seeing the things that happen, it's for a reason. And as we learn to embrace that and understand it more, I think it did expand us. The part of what I had written down here and didn't quite understand, and I think I see it a little clearer now. I think the quietness of these earthquakes points to us. I think it's meant for us. It's something that, unless you're a scientist and want to know too, why this is happening all of a sudden, because that fault is not something new. It's been there. why is there an awakening now? I really think on the spiritual perspective, this is saying to us, this is meant for you. This is something that you are to pay attention to. You that are searching for truth, you that have been seeking to be one with the universe. This is something for you to see. And so, as we, look at it and ponder it, and I didn't know how many it was until Charles said that. At one time, I was trying to keep up with them, and they started happening more and more frequently. So that's the only reason I bring it up is so that we can embrace it and look at it, and maybe from time to time see what we see in it and what we because I think as we move to a place of truth, what we see is what will be. So if you see this truth in this, then you are defining or not defining, but you are saying what that thing is and what we would get from it. That also moved me to a place of looking at and talking about the expansion. The other thing that I see with the expansion is the more we embrace that, the more you move away from ego. The more you step aside self and what Ron has defined Ron to be, and you become the universe. You become that expansion. You become one with the people on this phone. And that I don't mean just pastor and the teachers, but everybody who puts energy, everybody who breathes while we're on this phone and accepts what is being said and even questions it so we can dig deeper. So we are moving away from ego and moving above the individualities and those struggles. I think will be a part of that as far as helping us to expand and see who we are, but they also become less taxing on us as we move in the direction that we're moving. But thank you. That's all I want to add.
Ron, one thing I think it was Kathy or Audrey that brought this up a couple of weeks ago too, is one thing I want to point out too is what we're experiencing now and the clarity that the clarity that's being revealed to us. This is what I think it was Kathy we talked about a couple of weeks ago. This is the beginning of formation of the new heaven, new earth, the insight, the spiritual awareness, and the clarity. It's really the clarity that we're getting now. This is an example that can point to that when you start talking about, I saw a new heaven, new earth, spiritual impact of that scripture is really talking about this level of awareness and clarity that we're getting around all these things now. Because yesterday we talked about just like when you separate the words out, the scriptures out, it's nothing that's really new, but it's the collection, it's the alignment of it now, it's the clarity around it, it's just the understanding of the identity and feeling that role and how we truly are who we've been saying we are now. It's the actual manifestation of seeing that clarity and understanding now. It's the expansion. This is the new heaven and new earth beginning to form from a spiritual mindset perspective. I just wanted to kind of point that out. It's like that question came up a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about it. But when we start looking at things and how things are really forming up, and with the two natures and the two, earthly and spiritual mentality, how we're having to deal with things, this is the beginning of that formation of it, I think.
Yes, I think that is the the beginning of our knowing how to recognize it. And the reason I say that is because we have formed an attitude that embraces who we were created to be. And we are beginning to see what that looks like. And in turn, we all begin to see what the new heaven and the new earth looks like. And the reason I say that is because I know it is going to take some time to remove from our mindset that heaven is a destination and earth is this physical ball. When we talk about the new heaven and the new earth, we are talking about a new consciousness, a fresh consciousness, a fresh awareness. That's what the new heaven is. So I think we're getting that fresh awareness, especially since you introduced the senses, especially the eighth sense in particular. We're beginning to see that picture, that tapestry come into view. And the new earth is when the earth becomes balanced with the concepts of enlightenment. When the new earth is an earth that embraces loving kindness, an earth that knows and that practices the principle that love covers a multitude of entanglements. And Elohim does not desire for anyone to remain in bondage, but Elohim desires for everyone to be delivered, which means that the deliverance is bringing about the vision of the new earth. And when I say Elohim, it comes from that verse that says that it is God's will that none be lost but all be saved. It is the will, the desire of Elohim that everyone be delivered from the bondage that has been imposed by others or self-imposed. And when as we do that, we are bringing about a different frequency to dominate the earth by virtue of having the understandings of what it means and what it looks like to be Elohim, to function as Elohim and as Elohim alone. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you for for definitely expanding on that. That was kind of my thought. Is we start understanding, who we are, and the more and more we get clarity on that, we begin to see that new view because of that expansion and the peripheral. Just our awareness, our vision gets expanded, and the spiritual awareness gets expanded. That's the eighth sense, because like when we look at the vision from I'm not talking about vision from our two eyes, but just overall how we walk through life and we miss things and we weren't aware that something would have happened or something that happened, and we don't think about the impact of it now. And I think of it, example of I was coming back down the road the other day, and it was sort of a bad accident, and always this is just an example of just thinking a little deeper, a little awareness. And when I see a bad accident or an accident to happen, even if it's just in general traffic, I just hope, so, oh God, the first thing that comes to mind, I hope everyone's okay. And then keep going on. Well, now if I see one, I still hope that everyone's okay. But I also, think about the disruption that may have happened in their day and their life. And I hope that disruption is going to result in a positive income for the people, a positive outcome for the people involved. Because, someone could have been uninsured, or it could have meant so many other things. You start thinking about the things that that are impacted by the accident down the line. And for whatever reason, that crosses my mind now too. That I hope that, from my financial standpoint, it doesn't hurt them in other ways too. So I also think of, okay, I want everyone to be, fine and walk away from it, but I also want it to be a positive outcome in their day-to-day life. And so that's now my thought every time I see one or ride by one, for an example. And so there's just sometimes we get, different insight on things, and that allows us to kind of think a little deeper. And that's just an example of what I'm saying is happening to us here now, is that we're getting more information, but the information is coming to us so much clearer now that we can understand, where it goes and how it flows. We can kind of not be worried about trying to shape it and just embrace it and let it go. But our minds and thoughts are just, things are just open up now that we've got some of those blinders off of us, and we're able to kind of function, with the mindset that we're all, we're connected to humanity. And so that's just one of the things now that when I see those accidents, for instance, I'm just giving an example, I try to also think about, okay, wanting these folks, both sides that are involved to have a positive outcome from it, and not just, hoping that they're just okay, but also walking away from it, having that positive outcome. If that makes sense. I was just trying to give an example of the expansion of our vision and our awareness. But does everyone see that?
I see what you mean. Yes, I one of the things that I also see with expansion is, it helps us to be in that mindset all the time. It's we talk about meditation and being able to meditate on a continuous basis, and that's what we're talking about when we talk about expansion. So you again, you can't be there if your mind is constantly on yourself or your own issues. It is moving past self and seeing things from a different or more inclusive perspective, and that's what keeps you in that mindset. So we move to a place where we're not, as using your example, we're not always reactive. We're always in that mindset to be, to see things and wish and hope for positive outcomes. So, yeah, I think it fits right in what was being said.
Yeah, because the scripture that really, like, I keep going back to that talks about the 8 cents, that Galatians 5 and 16, and this kind of paraphrase it. It's like we hear it a lot, but those who walk in the Spirit have the privilege of God's own perspective on life decisions as He guides us, through His Spirit, and we can receive that through meditation. We can be influenced. It can influence our intuition, and it's going back to where we quiet our minds and focus on truth. That guidance opens us up to operate on a different level. And like I said, I keep going back, that different level, that is that 8 cents. So, God's perspective is in us. It's just a matter of, like I said, aligning it and uncovering it, because we are Elohim and we get that perspective. We get those, we get that guidance. And those are things that help us, drive through and we become more sensitive to things that are, happening around us. And when we're not operating that guidance, we're not as sensitive to things going on around us. which in turn goes back to what you said earlier, Ron. Like, you know, how is that power distributed? Well, if you're not aware of someone needing your energy, and but your energy is not involved in that situation, and so that awareness, it strictly allows us not to get tired or to be worn down, but it also allows us to involve our energy in a given situation. And that involvement is motivated or managed by who we are and the understanding of who we are clearly. And so that clarity allows us to be who we need to be, whether it be the examples we've been given the last weekend to Kathy, Barbara, Audrey, the different examples we've given. That involvement, that awareness allows us to get ourselves involved. And on the flip side of that, think about how many people who refuse to participate in anything for fear of failure, for fear of it negatively impacting them. You know, there are a lot of people that walk around, say, well, I'm not going to go there, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to keep to myself, I'm not getting involved in anything because it's going to negatively impact me and I'm not going to do it. So think about the mindset of that person too. And so every time we make someone more aware of who they are, we're releasing more of that positive energy in the earth. Because there are a lot of people that refuse or they think they can't, but we're all, one way or the other, we all have to participate in this thing. But there are a lot of people that refuse to participate or get involved. And so they're isolating the energy. It's sort of selfish, and when we make people aware of who they are clearly, and the more clear and more clarity they get on their identity, it allows them to participate fully and to be purposeful, to use their purpose. And that's just more energy that we have released to combat some of the things that we talked about earlier. And it's, you know, like yesterday, we used the example too of when we understand our identity, we function as a solution. We are the solution no matter what. And it goes to what you do best. You're not going to take your car to McDonald's for them to work on it. You know, when someone knows their identity, they function best. And that's what we're talking about. Any questions or comments on that?
Yeah, as I want to go back to something that you said earlier, about God showing us and guiding us. That guidance from our Creator does not come without permission, because we are the ones who make the decisions for the earth. And because of that, if we don't make a decision to understand more clearly our purpose for having been created and what should our desires be, if we don't make some decisions about that and then conclude that it's for the benefit of everyone as opposed to one church denomination of a church, that is when we began to see the impact of the guidance that we're getting. But it only comes when we embrace the reality that the one who created us absolutely no influence in this earth unless we grant that permission. Because if we read the scriptures clearly, it says that the one who created us gave us authority over the earth. And having given us authority over the earth, that in itself speaks volumes to what the expectations are for us when we begin to function in that manner. So I want us to keep in mind that we have always been Elohim, but we have not always been aware that we are Elohim. We've always had an opportunity to function the way we now function. We were not aware that it was hidden from us by virtue of of us embracing the sentiments or the beliefs of religion. But so I don't want us to lose sight of that. The guidance come because we requested it, because we granted for the intervening to take place in our lives. And when intervening in our lives, we are the ones who are actually obligated to expand that intervention, meaning that we are obligated to enforce the reality of what we were expected to do in the earth, and that is to create. So again, please don't ever forget that the only reason the Creator intervenes in the earth is because of the permission that we have given it to do that, because we don't know what it's supposed to look like without that intervention. Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it, because we have a choice to we have free will, but almost like you said, there's a choice of there's a price to be paid one way or the other by participating or not participating. So if we choose to not, then we deal with the results of that. If we choose to, then we continue on to pursue and expand and grow based on who we are, and understand that. But it's when I say, well, we have to do one or the other, it's not that you're forced to have to make a choice, but at the same time, things still happen, and so the results of what we choose are always still going to be there for us too. And I think, if what I've seen the last month or so going through this lesson is that there's just so much more there, and we're not looking anywhere else. We're just looking at ourselves. There's so much more there that you uncover and understand about yourself, and that understanding, that clarity we're getting as individuals. Going back to what Barbara said, is as individuals, we're opening up the door, and we're trusting each other as well. So the more clarity we get on ourselves, and if the person next to you is doing it, and that's why military it functions as well as it does when it's functioning at its best. It's based on one goal, one trust, and so when we look at ourselves when we make the commitment to understand and the discipline it takes to get ourselves prepared, that preparation allows us to truly understand the connection and bond with the rest of each other and humanity. And so it's just when we choose to go that route, the connection will come, the intuition, all the instincts that we need will be sharpened. We just have to apply the discipline. So the price we pay, part of it is that the discipline to trust the process and participate in it. And if we don't participate and we don't show the discipline to do it, then the results of that is what it is. But it's so much more rewarding, and it just seems so much that the fact that we're getting this clarity. The clarity is the thing that is just blowing my mind. It's just the clarity of understanding it, and you see things differently. You see things differently in your individual life, and that's the first place it starts. And you see things differently in your individual life, but it also just makes us more aware of what's going on around us, the environment we're in, the community, the stuff that we have been involved in. And then from there, that creation looks different. Our creation looks so much different once we get that clarity. I hope that wasn't too long-winded as far as the follow-up there, but I hope everyone sees where I was coming from with that.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from.
I have a question. This is Charles. When you said when God intervened, is that like when everyone in the collective cry out to him, or just one person?
It can be one person who cries out. As a matter of fact, if you think about it, during the period that Jesus walked the earth, prior to him, there had been many voices crying out. But when Jesus was born into the earth, his voice was the one that was crying out. So it does not have to be every voice that cries out. Make sense, Charles?
It makes sense.
This may sound, I can remember being younger and everyone, I looked at it as a kid, everyone's ready to go home. You know, the message was delivered in church and we're sitting there, but you're waiting for the benediction and somebody stands up and they say, well, hey, I want to tell y'all something that's like, I heard God last night. And over the years, and I was young and just, immature, he's kind of growing up. And it's the same three people that would always do it. And it's like, well, man, I can remember then, it's like, man, I'm going to wait to hear God. But everybody talks about what they saw that night before. It's like, oh, I heard this from God. And it's like, we got to the point where like, okay, we're ready to go. Well, this guy's going to tell his story every Sunday. So we'd look around to see if he was going to stand up to tell his story. And then, you go travel around and some other churches, it was sort of the same thing. But now look back at the point where we are now, that when we hear God, we're hearing our true self. And so, like Pastor said, it could be one, it could be many, but as long as it's truth and as long as it's coming from the source, it is what it is on that. And so that's what connects us. It's the truth that connects us. It's the understanding that we understand who we are. We're on the same team. You realize that. And so each person's individually approaching it in a different way. But at the core, we're still the same. We're still cut from the same cloth, like they said. And when we hear God, we're really hearing from our true selves because we are Elohim. It's just that your thoughts, everything has lined up to a point, to a place to where you're so sensitive and aware to it that you can hear it and you're not missing it. I just wanted to say that. Thank you. Any other statements or questions? The one other thing I wanted to add today before we close is that going back to the expansion and the desires that we have. We said this yesterday, and for some reason I just felt like it's important to say it again. Like we go on this journey, and we were saying yesterday, like sometimes you feel like last week I had a feeling for a day that I had a setback or took a step back, there's really not any ones were on a call yesterday. There's really not anything that we're stepping back from or having setbacks. Our growth is the expansion, the horizontal expansion, and things that we perceive as setbacks or stepbacks, or embrace them, because we're going to have to transform that energy of what we think is a setback or a step back. So don't look at it as something that's coming and it's forcing you to go backwards, because your growth is there already. Your expansion is there. That expansion allows us to just embrace that and repurpose that energy that's coming at you. So when you see something that's coming at you as a step, and you perceive it as a setback or step back, one of the points that we brought up yesterday was it's really like repurpose that energy, because you're growing. Your expansion is the growth. That's where your growth is, because we've been so accustomed in the past to have something outside do it, or a solution, or look for help. And our help now, we understand that the solution is who we are. So I just want to remind everybody that because of who we are, things that are perceived as setbacks or obstacles or repurpose that energy based on who you are, and have that true clarity of how you're going to function, and don't view it as something that it's just an opportunity to absorb it, embrace it, and see what comes out of it, because you're going to repurpose that energy. But who we are, once you understand, you're clear on that, that's not going to change. So I just wanted to really add that before we close today, and give you something to think about in regards to that. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, sir, T.
It does.
I guess a good place for a pen. And I think what we're starting to realize too, that we're not reinventing the wheel, but the selection of everything that we've been talking about is really just lining up, and it's everything's really coming together, and the order is there, and this eighth sense is really teaching us how we should function. And it seems like it's just the clarity is coming there. So that's my goal really, is just to kind of like just to pull everything together, and just so that we're clear on it. And then as individuals, like we talked about in the very, very beginning, is we can go back and just digest this and really see how it fits for you as an individual, and really apply it and embrace it, meditate on it, get your thoughts in line with it, and just really just relax with it, because we talked about last week, we get into a relaxed state, and we realize that none of the other things really affect us in a way that we would normally have it. There's no coincidence that these patterns are happening for a reason. So just embrace the lesson and see this thing coming together, but get your own individual clarity around it too, and inform your questions and thoughts around it too, and the guidance will be there. And if there are any questions, then moving forward in the future too, we can always. But I encourage everybody just to just embrace it, digest it, go back and get your individual clarity around it, and but just know that there's no coincidence. There's no patterns that are just not coming without a purpose, because we're always supposed to be in the right place at the right time. As we understand who we are and more is deposited in us, it's just gonna just increase our clarity. But that's really all I have for today, unless anyone's got any other questions or comments. Okay, if not, we'll call it a day and reconvene tomorrow. And it just seems like it's flowing so fast. I didn't even realize. It felt like we've only been talking about 15 minutes here. But if no other questions or comments, I definitely will put a pause on it for today. I hope everyone has a good day.
Thanks,
Thanks,
sis.
Seth.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good day.
Bye, everybody. Have a good day.
Have a good day,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Hey, Shal.
Bye.
Bye.